The $200 budget gaming motherboard is the most important segment of the computer market. These are the motherboards you're gonna most likely see in computers all around the world. So manufacturers, when they release one of those boards, really cannot get it wrong. The pressure is on. And with its X570 Elite, AORUS wants to show it does things differently and arguably betterly. That's not a word, is it? Now, we are dealing with the most affordable X570 powered motherboard AORUS has to offer. And what is really unique about AORUS and their approach to budget motherboard is that without any regret, it axes out any features which has nothing to do with performance or power delivery. The result is an unapologetically VRM-focused motherboard, which goes straight to the essentials, even if arguably that means sacrificing important features. Now, starting with the obvious, we are dealing with an ATX 4-layered PCB, and having only 4-layer PCB is somewhat of a risk. To properly isolate PCIe 4th generation signals and avoid interferences with other components, manufacturers usually went for at least 6-layer PCB. And despite putting this board through hell, it was rock solid, stable all through my testing, and yeah, so no worries about this. AORUS definitely took a gamble, but a gamble which paid off. Our AM4 socket supports both 2000 and 3000 Ryzen CPU series, and note your board will operate in a PCIe 4th generation only if coupled with a Ryzen 3000 series CPU. VRM wise, well, that's what I was saying earlier. This is where all the money is. We have a 12 plus 250 amps V-core phases organized in a 6 plus 1 true phases configuration. That is the most powerful VRM configuration you will find on any X570 motherboard at that price range. It can dispense up to 600 watt to power the most demanding CPU AMD produces. Cooling wise, the heatsinks do an absolute amazing job. They are thick, tall, large, and have plenty of radiating surface. And indeed, I am only talking about heatsinks. Hey! Actually, even with an overclocked 3900X, at no point did I detect the VRM going beyond 70 degrees Celsius, which makes the AORUS X570 Elite the coolest VRM-centric motherboard I had reviewed thus far. And that is everything AORUS needed to get right in order to make this motherboard everything you'd hoped it to be. RAM-wise, we have our usual dual-channel configuration supporting up to 128GB of DDR4 RAM. Now, coupled with a Ryzen 2000 CPU, you can overclock it up to a modest but stable 3.2 GHz, and if coupled with a Ryzen 3000 CPU series, you will be able to go up to 4 GHz as usual. This is one of the aspects where you can see the direct impact that Ryzen 3000 can have on an X570 motherboard in terms of performances. Staying in the memory, our X570 Elite can support up to 2 horizontal M.2 solid-state drive in a PCIe 3.0 configuration. They will swap data up to 32 gigabit per second, and if coupled with a Ryzen 3000 CPU and therefore running in a PCIe 4th generation standard, they will be swapping data up to an incredible 64 gigabit per second. And obviously in both cases this does translate in a lot of heat, and that is precisely why AORUS has equipped at least one of the M.2 solid-state drive slots with a rather thick and very heat-efficient thermo-padded heat shield. By the way, if you do plan to boot from an M.2 solid-state drive, this is therefore where I would place it to avoid any kind of thermo throttling. And talking of it, our X570 chipset consumes twice more the electrical wattage of its predecessor and notoriously is hotter. And I have seen all of the different active cooling solutions proposed by the different manufacturers, but I've never seen one that good. Apart from the 60,000 hours graded silent delta turbine, the heatsink is so big and heavy and thick. I am almost tempted to say that the heatsink itself in a passive way should have been enough to keep our chipset cooled at all times. So another major kudos to AORUS for this. Storage-wise, we have our usual and impressive 6th third generation setup legs, which I do not know why I even care talking about anymore. It's slow, It's old, it'll bottleneck anything you'll connect on it. I would therefore suggest you just ignore them and use a M.2 solid state drive instead, but that's me. Anyways, export-wise, our board comes with 4 PCIe slots, 2 single-slot single speeds and 2 16 slots with different speeds. Note that only the closest 16 slots to the CPU can deliver up to 16 bus speeds, and therefore this is where you'd want to place your video card for optimal performances, hence the metallic reinforcements. The second 16 slots has been capped to deliver only up to 4 bus speed, and that would not be enough to run optimally any video card. At least that's what I would have said in a PCIe 3rd generation motherboard only, but since coupled with the Ryzen 3000 we can have a PCIe 4th generation standard running on our PCIe exports, this 4 bus lane 16 slot can easily support any kind of video card we have on the market today without bottlenecking. So I would have loved to see a second metallic reinforcement because indeed if you have 2 Radeon video card, this is a crossfire enabled motherboard, you can operate multiple GPUs, at least 2 of them, without any kind of performance issues. So something to keep in mind for all manufacturers out there for the future. Now that's not all I wanted to say about this sidebar. Even though PCIe 4th generation gives twice the bandwidth, it doesn't mean that you're going to see performance gain on your video cards, gaming-wise, simply because we have no video cards on the market today which can deliver more bandwidth than the PCIe 3rd generation can handle so far. So it's great for, say, M.2 solid state, PCIe-based storage, or multiple video card configuration, as I just mentioned it, but that's it. Or even great future proofing, but that's it. You're not gonna find any kind of PC gaming performance gain, at least not right now or on this generation of video cards. End of sidebar. Back IO-wise, first let me note the presence of an integrated IO shield, not always present at $200, so that's a major kudos to AORUS. And starting from the left, we have 4 second generation USB plugs, 4 5 gigabit USB plugs. Now the white USB plug is not first generation, it only indicates where to put your BIOS USB flashback stick when you want to upgrade your BIOS. Only 2 10 gigabit USB plugs, and given the fact that we do have an X570 bandwidth monster chipset on this motherboard, I do not see why we don't have 2 more 3.2 second generation plugs, including a Type-C. So yeah, something that I'd like to see corrected on the next iteration of this board. Our gigabit LAN plug and our rather premium 1200 AC Realtek 8-channel audio codec. And here I have to give a major kudos to AORUS for using the WiMAX capacitors. The WiMAX capacitors are the only one I know which can successfully completely clear the audio lines from any kind of ground or static interferences. Yeah, major kudos to AORUS for this. Front panel connector wise, we have 2 second generation USB plugs, 2 5 gigabit USB plugs, and we have a 10 gigabit Type-C 3.2 second generation USB plug. Obviously this is luxury because rarely do we see it on any motherboard at all, so let alone $200 ones. Cooling wise, oh boy, are we in for a treat. You might be surprised to only see 4 fan connectors, but these are not your everyday fan connectors, they're hybrid connectors, meaning that you can operate your PWM fans, but also water pump, proper custom water cooling water pumps, water flows, and even thermal sensors on any of those 4 connectors. And that is a game changer as far as I'm concerned in terms of PCB layouts, because I love the fact we have less, but it also gives you so much more. And it's the first time I see it on a motherboard, and it makes this AORUS X570 Elite a custom water cooling dream, if anything else. And I really hope to see much more of the hybrid connectors all around the motherboard market altogether. Big kudos to AORUS for this. Finally, this would not be a gamer's motherboard without a flurry of RGB connectors, starting with 2 nested RGB strips, one under our I/O housing and one nested right inside our PCB board. And if that was not enough, and it rarely is, we do have 4 Fusion compatible RGB connectors, 2 of which are addressable, and that is obviously luxury because this is not something you'd see at $200 either. Now, in conclusion, at $200, the AORUS X570 Elite shares its market segment with at least 3 other manufacturers, which released at exactly the same price competitive motherboard. And the way AORUS decided to differentiate itself, as I said in the beginning of the video, is in the very same way they did with their Z390 series. They removed all the non-essentials from this board, proposed a bare bone layout, and focused every dollar on the CPU power delivery. And indeed, the AORUS X570 Elite has the best VRM you can hope to find at that price range, both in terms of performances and in power efficiency. AORUS has also focused its money on the X570 Elite cooling components. The VRM heatsinks, despite not having fins, are almost the best I've seen in terms of dissipation. No small feat for a 14 power stages VRM. And the chipset heatsink is hands down the best one I have ever seen anywhere, period. And couple that with those 4 hybrid fan connectors, and you have this economic yet versatile motherboard which can accommodate anything, including the most extravagant custom water cooling solutions, even a dual loop custom water cooling solution. So I've seen a lot of $200 budget gaming motherboards on the X570 series, but none of which could successfully combine that simplicity, that non-essential board layout and raw power. This board has been engineered, and AORUS wants you to take note of it, as well as all its competition. And I think that it did an absolutely amazing job, and that it, without any question, the very best motherboard you can have at $200 or even $250 if it was that expensive on the market today.